You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRTrader.com. He's speaking to us from Arizona. Welcome back to the show, and happy July 4th.
Yes, thank you, and happy previous Canada Day. So we have a holiday week here, with shortened trading for both markets, but it didn't stop the major averages, particularly the S&P here in the U.S., hitting a new all-time high. And we had the good news, depends, I guess, on your perspective, but I think it was good news that they passed the budget in the U.S. House of Representatives today, confirming the Senate changes. So it's the big, beautiful tax bill that Donald Trump wanted got through, and they got it through before the 4th of July. So that's sort of the big news this week. There was a story earlier in the week, I think we may have mentioned it last week, that Donald Trump has already picked out successors to the Fed chairman slot. He actually called this week, which he hadn't done before this week, asking for Jay Powell's resignation, which is long overdue, but he may not resign. So at least we know come next summer there's going to be a new Fed chairman, which will be more accommodative and really start lowering interest rates, which is what, Donald Trump's pushing Powell to do. So, like I say, it's much talk about nothing. The bond market has been rallying a little bit, not a lot, but a minor little rally in the 30-year bond, which is bullish for stocks, regardless of what the Fed does. And maybe the old tail wagging the dog theory that the 30-year bond, ultimately forced the hand of the Fed. But again, what happens with the bond market is more important because that affects mortgage rates and all kinds of stuff. And the Fed funds rate that everybody's jumping up and down about, that Powell is not lowering, really is of less importance other than psychological impact. So it's been a good summer for stocks. There's a big sell-off in April on that Liberation Day news regarding tariffs, and now it seems like some of the countries are coming into line. Still having a little trouble with India, but Vietnam went along with it. Britain went along with it. Canada, sort of helped out a little bit here, with deciding not to put that tax on, I guess it was technical or electronic or AI or something to that effect, some type of, technological tax that Canada had imposed, which apparently that was good news that they took that off. So, there's always surprises, can come from left field. There's still Iran out there and Mideast. And we always, seem to get surprises when we least expect it, including that huge sell-off we saw in April, coming on that Liberation Day news. Though my model had indicated that we were going to have a sell-off, in that March-April period. So I was warning about that from the beginning of the year when we put out our forecast model, which is that publication we put out at VR Trader every year at the beginning of the year. So it was on track for that, which I'm happy about. So that's sort of the summary here. It's not a quiet holiday week, with a lot of things happening, both on the political side and in terms of stock prices. And we'll see how it all plays out.
What's going on with gold?
It's hanging in there. Silver's doing a little bit better on a relative basis. Not, bearish on gold, but, there is risk there, as international political stability comes back, hopefully. I think Donald Trump's was talking to Putin today. At least that's what I heard in the morning news. What came of that phone conversation, I don't know. I haven't heard anything, but obviously what happens in Ukraine and obviously with Iran and the Mideast, these are all gold-driven events. So in theory, again, this is in theory, forgetting the monetary aspect because I think it's more geopolitical, but given that things settle down, which may not be the case, maybe that's why gold's holding up here. But given the case that everything calms down, then gold would have a correction. My gut feeling is that Europeans want war. You read stories about how the UK and France are building up, and the EU Union doing the same thing. They're just raising money for weapons and all kinds of stuff. It seems like, they're looking for war. They're just psychologically prepared for that. And I think Canada is going along with that, which is sort of dumb, but instead of, trying to get out of it, they seem to want it or need it for some reason. So,
well, your president's insisting that NATO spend 5% of its GDP on defense. I think that's what's driving it.
Okay, so that's helping some of the European stocks because money is going into the defense stocks over there. So, I mean, it just seems like the psychology for war is still out there. Seems to be good for the economies of Europe or other places, and the old industrial military complex warning from Eisenhower still stays with us, and it seems like, it's just unfortunate. So it's a long-winded answer, but if that's the probability, then gold will probably continue to hold up or go higher, particularly if there's more, geopolitical instability and war accelerates at some point. It seems like that's where we're headed, unfortunately. But, apparently some economies like war. Stocks don't necessarily go down during war. It's a sad story, but, it seems like the market likes war. Obviously, if it gets out of hand, then everybody suffers. But so the gold answer, I think, is tied to geopolitical. So we'll see how it plays out. In terms of the metals, I mentioned this in a previous interview, platinum and palladium really took off, and they're still holding up near the recovery highs this past week. A lot of the rare metals type stocks have been holding up. There was an interesting story today on CNBC. There's a little company called the Metals Company, ticker symbol TMC. I'm not recommending it, but Jim Cramer on CNBC was touting it, talking about apparently Donald Trump supporting their actions to retrieve rare metals and earths from the oceans. And I haven't verified the whole story except for what I heard on CNBC. So this little stock, didn't do a lot today. Went between $6.50 and $7.50 a share, but apparently it's a metals-related stock having to do recovery from the oceans. So that's interesting. It's like drilling for oil and on ocean platforms and stuff, going to other sources for it, particularly since, we are seeking more sources for rare earths and other needed metals. And I guess that's one of the reasons why platinum and palladium started to catch up here. Remember years past, platinum, you always used to trade a big premium over gold for years and years and years, and suddenly it languished and went into the cellar, and there's a long way from catching up to where gold is. But if it decides to catch up, it's a steal here. I mean, platinum used to trade, I think it was 100% more than gold did. I mean, if that happened again this time, platinum could be, who knows, $3,000, $5,000. So we'll see how that all plays out. But a lot of interest in the metals and rare earth and stuff, and gold in particular, like I say, holding up for geopolitical reasons. And silver and platinum and palladium seem to catch more of the investors' eye this past week than gold did.
What's going on with crude?
Just languishing here. It's still, I think, more bearish than bullish. Obviously, they didn't close the Strait of Hormuz. Iran didn't, or didn't attempt to do it. I think that would probably be the end of Iran for sure, because then the European allies, we may not agree on everything with Ukraine, but they'll be attacking Iran for sure, because it would affect the Europeans. And, China gets a lot of its oil from Iran. So obviously, Iran doesn't want to bite the hand that, feeds them. So that's not going to happen. So it doesn't look like oil really is going to go up very much, if at all. So, it would have to be, a dramatic geopolitical event, like the Strait of Hormuz or some crazy thing like that. But with the production increasing here, the U.S. being North America getting more independent or has been independent for a while, I don't see why crude oil should go up. In the last couple of years, I was more bullish on it. But, when Trump got elected and when the leases and the availability of oil became more prevalent and available, it just seemed like it really had no place to go to the upside. Seems like natural gas and nuclear and other sources of energy seem to be the big focus where money is going. And, that sort of puts a damper. Meanwhile, on a political basis, the low price of oil and lower gas prices is good, for the economy and for the politicians. So I think gasoline prices are hitting recent lows here, and that's bullish for stocks because, as you know, higher oil prices and gasoline prices are a tax on the consumer. So the bull case in stocks looks like it's still continuing, and that would tell me that crude oil is probably still under pressure.
We'll have more with Mark Leibovit right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mark Leibovit. Mark, what's going on in the copper market?
Copper's done better. Our play in that area is stocks like Southern Copper, ticker SCCO, if you follow those symbols, or Freeport McMoran FCX, which actually partially a gold stock. Definitely investor interest back in it, recovering with the economy. So we're long. I still think that there's just another metals play. Platinum, palladium, rare earths, silver, gold, copper. It all mixes in with the scenario that we need all these products. So Freeport, hit a new recovery high yesterday, Wednesday. Today's Thursday when we're doing this recording, and I see no reason why it should change direction, even though it has a gold component to it. Most people look at it as a copper stock. Now, it's not a new big high. The big high in Freeport, was way back in May of last year in the mid-50s, and now it's in the mid-40s, but it's a new recovery high since the April lows. So looks like it's coming off the lows and looks okay to me. So we're positive on it.
What's happening on the geocosmic front?
Well, interesting story. This is a little bit of a sideline. I love talking about this stuff. There's a CME just passed the Earth. That's like a solar wind, and it was a close encounter and didn't really spark any geomagnetic storm. But the other real interesting story is there's an interstellar comet called Atlas, and this doesn't mean very much, I guess, to the average observer. But according to recent astronomical history, this is the third known interstellar object to pass through our solar system. And that's very unusual. Usually stuff like the comets, circle the sun and are held in place and circle around based on the sun's gravity. But for something to enter and exit the solar system, seems like it's on its own power. And there was I'm trying to pronounce the name of it. You can pronounce it better than me. The one that was passing through a couple of years ago. Do you remember how to pronounce that, Jim?
Moa or something like that. It's a Hawaiian name. It was
a Hawaiian name, and Dr. Avi Loeb from Harvard, he's a head astronomer over there, speculated it might be an interstellar spacecraft from another civilization that was passing through our solar system because it just went straight through like it was under some type of its own power and acting very unusual, and just like came through, checked this out, and just kept on going. Like, we sent Voyager into space decades ago just checking out the solar system and the universe. So this comet, and I'm not speculating it's an interstellar alien craft or anything, but the fact it's a third known interstellar object that passed through the solar system is really interesting stuff. So you can possibly see it, but the interesting story is that it's on a course for the planet Mars right now. And not to say it's going to hit Mars, but it's going to come close to Mars. So we'll see what that's into. But it's interesting when you hear these stories about interstellar objects, and they're rare, that pass through apparently on their own power in some way through the solar system and not affected by the sun's gravity. So just that's sort of what's new in the geocosmic this week. I thought that's really fascinating stuff.
What's happening on the cryptocurrency front?
Well, interesting you should bring that up. So we had a little volatility this week in Bitcoin. On June 22nd, it got down to 99,498. And here about 10 days later, it got up to, I think it was this morning or yesterday, 110,368. The big high, by the way, is on May 22nd. That was 11,714. So we didn't quite get back to that level, but we got, within $1,000 or so, in the last 24 hours. So, a lot of technicians like myself are saying, well, if you can break through that 11,000 level, you're probably heading up to 115 and ultimately into the 140s over time. So it's trading around right near its highs, though we had that little dip down to 99,000 on June 22nd. So the history here, recent history to summarize, we got up to 11,719 on May 22nd, and 30 days later exactly, it got down to 99,498. So you had about a $10,000, $12,000 correction, and now we're back up retesting the highs. And it'll be interesting if it happens right now or not. It's going to. It's just a matter of, it's when you least expect it. You wake up one morning and it's trading at $120,000 or some crazy number, and you can't believe that you missed it. So, the 140s and plus a lot more than that is possible, in the near future. And, it's tough paying that kind of price for it. There are other ways to trade it. There's ETFs and so forth that give you an opportunity to participate. We have a couple mentioned in our blockchain newsletter, which you can subscribe to at vrtrader.com. In fact, we're going to be publishing that Friday night. So, action there, and tons of other things that are going on. This past week, the past 2 weeks, we had Circle. That's the stable coin ETF that came public. The stable coins are big because you may see big companies like Walmart and others actually start to use these stable coins instead of, normal currency or credit cards. So it went from $64 up to $298 right after its initial public offering. This is all in the last 3 weeks. Then it settled back to $171 a share. I think that's about 180, I think, is where it is tonight. But this is one of many IPOs that are coming related to stablecoin and ETFs related to the crypto. In fact, one of the hot names out there is XRP, which is controlled by a company called Ripple. And from what I read, there's a dozen or more ETFs now in registration looking to come out and start trading the XRP. And history sort of suggests that you have enough ETFs focusing on any particular market, it helps support or drive prices higher, as we saw with gold, with GLD was created many years ago. So you would think something like XRP would do better. And we know for sure, was it last March in 2024, when BlackRock, Larry Fink's company, which is the largest money manager on earth, initiated and supported the creation of the ETF for Bitcoin, ticker symbol IBIT, and it went public. And what happened to Bitcoin? Well, it took off to the upside. So by creating these ETFs, which mirror the price of the underlying crypto, it's going to be a supportive factor for prices. So it's just a self-fulfilling future. I can't give you the exact moment. Bitcoin could be 140,000 on Monday, or it could be a year from Monday, but it's going up because you've got a lot of institutional support, ETFs and stuff being created. And when stuff like stable coins are being legitimatized here and Congress is behind it and big name companies, like a Walmart or other retailers are going to start using stable coins. I mean, the whole sphere surrounding the whole crypto area is extremely bullish. So it just, it's a transformation that the financial system is going through, Jim. So you got to be in there. It's like saying, should I be in gold or should I be in oil or should I be in the S&P 500? It's an allocation decision, but it's definitely a place for action. So that's the summary.
Do you think the Fed's going to lower interest rates this month?
That's a good question. That would be a nice surprise if it happened, because the consensus is there was a jobs report that came out today, and apparently it was strong enough that the financial commentators, at least the ones I'm listening to, were saying, well, that really doesn't give the Fed any reason to lower rates. If a jobs report wasn't so positive, part of the mandate for the Federal Reserve is full employment. It's one of the stability and full employment that's in the act that when they created the Federal Reserve is all about it. So if employment is not suffering, they have less reason to lower rates. If employment was going down and it's not being stimulated and they need stimulation, they figure they lower rates and it helps the employment situation. So the consensus view today was there's less reason that it would happen because of the employment report. But it would be funny if you decide to lower it anyway because of the political pressure which is being exerted by Donald Trump, the threat of firing him. And I'm sure he's well aware he's going to be replaced. So I don't know if that would make him less or more stubborn than he already is, so whether it even makes a difference. But it would be since the consensus at the moment is it's not going to happen in the July meeting, the surprise could be just the opposite. So let's see. Should be interesting.
Mark, thank you so much for chatting with us, and enjoy Independence Day.
Thank you very much, Jim. I hope you enjoy. Well, it's not a day off for you guys, but hope you enjoy it anyway. Thanks.
I like watching the fireworks come off the Space Needle in Seattle.
Oh, and you could see it from your window?
Sure.
Wow. Isn't it about 200 miles?
Yeah,
What's
it is.
Distance?
Yeah, if Customs wasn't there, I'd be visiting uncles and cousins there every weekend. But
okay.
Who wants to line up for 2.5 hours to be harassed by sweaty people?
I didn't know you could see it from Vancouver down.
No, you really can't. No, you really can't.
Okay. Because I've driven that stretch quite often. It's quite a stretch. So Thank you for letting me know. Take care. Okay.
My guest has been Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRTrader.com. He was speaking to us from Arizona. If you have any questions for Mark or for any of our guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. We'll ask that question for you. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on X @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.